Oh, did we lose Leon?
Yeah, you knocked us both out.
Oh, sorry.
You close it down. That's okay. He'll be back. Hey, Michael, good to meet you. Thanks for connecting with me on LinkedIn.
Hey, hey,
Hi.
good to see
Hello.
you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to still set up here. Boom. Yeah, okay. So there's the four of us to begin with. Yeah, Michael, nice to meet you via email and now kind of face to face.
I know.
We have Leon and Fabian coming in, so that's nice. Just gonna look at our website here.
Oh, Dini, as an answer, Budapest, Hungary.
Oh, good. Okay.
And you?
I'm coming from Washington State. I'm on the west coast of the United States.
Ah, okay.
I'm right across the river from Portland, Oregon.
Okay, right across the river.
Mhm. I can see the airport from my backyard.
Oh, really?
I'm on the river. I'm just right above the river.
Wow, that sounds cool.
It's beautiful. It's so pretty here. I lived in Texas most of my life in Louisiana. So it's nice to be in a part of the country that's cooler weather, better politics.
Mm.
Yeah, there is that.
There is that.
Fabian is still connected. Oh, you are connected to audio now. Okay, that's good.
Hello.
So much easier when Leon and Fabian was here, not little boxes. But yeah, so Michael, thank you for getting in touch. Probably a few more other people will join us today. It's very, very random. But would you like to introduce yourself beyond, actually, including the email, because I haven't told Leon or Fabian anything yet. We've been a bit busy.
Right. Sure, yeah. My name is Michael. I'm a PhD student at, oh, we're getting more visitors even now, so maybe we wait another minute.
Yeah, Rob's
Hi,
here. That's
Rob.
good. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Rob, darling.
Hey there,
Hey there.
Dini.
Another California
You've done
connection
something with
with
your
Rob.
hair.
I pulled it up. It's driving me crazy. So, Michael, where are you doing your PhD?
I'm at the Digital Media Lab at University of Bremen in the north of Germany.
I've been there. It's beautiful.
It is.
There's a
Autumn
conference
is here.
there.
It gets rainy, very rainy from now on.
Yeah. I was at a conference there some years ago.
It's a really lovely place to have weekend trips and conference trips too. Yeah. Yeah, so in my research, I'm doing interaction design for virtual reality primarily, and a side project, I work with voice assistants, but my dissertation is about the fidelity of VR interactions, mostly concerning haptics and embodiment.
Mhm.
And then I had a chat with Vint Cerf at the Heidelberg Laureate Forum last week, and we're talking about how text will need to change, will need to adapt um, to, well, the new challenges we'll face in immersive interactions or in 3D interactions. And then he dropped Frode's name, so I got in touch and was invited to this meeting.
And now we're friends on LinkedIn.
And now we're friends on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I didn't realize people still used LinkedIn, so that's quite cute.
It's pretty important here in the States. That's how my students are getting their jobs,
Oh, okay. Well,
industry.
that's very good. So, yeah. Um, so first of all, as I put in the link to the symposium, the videos are now up. It was kind of interesting because We filmed it in 360 video camera and screen record. The 360, something really weird happened to the display in the room, you know, where we all saw the slides. And the normal video, it was really wavy on the display, so it's really distracting. So it was just super odd. And we did also use a microphone that we handed around. But we had a normal large USB microphone next to the computer. And even though some of the video was quite boring now because it's just, you know, someone sitting there, at least the audio is fine. At least it's done, to my huge relief. Always something to stress about. Now it's a matter of chasing the articles for the book. And we were just, sorry, someone's about to say something.
Oh, I wanted to say, well done. Then
Thank you.
now we did it.
It was a particularly pleasant one. I really thought it was nice. I think maybe one of the things that helped was the ease of socializing afterwards. We were allowed to use the same space for once. So there wasn't all that hunting going around, all that nonsense. It just continued. And then we had a sizable liquor budget that had to be used up, otherwise it would be wasted. That was not a bad thing either. But yeah, it's funny, Leon, you and Minter, Gabo and team sitting up on the next day talking literally till to midnight on all the very same topics. I kind of expected at a certain point the vodka would change the topic, but no, that's never happened.
Yeah, that was fun. It was like a future of the symposium, the after symposium of the after party.
After symposium, yeah. Next year, we have decided that there will be no presentations online. Online will be a audience only. And that is not a criticism to the two groups who presented online this time, but it's just so much more valuable when we're in the room to continue the dialogue. I looked at the videos because normally we do 5-minute presentation, 10-minute dialogue. We've been doing that for a decade. This time, because there was a train strike and we were smaller and other issues, on average, it was half an hour per topic, per speaker. And that was actually good. That actually worked. And it works a lot better when everyone's in the room, despite the technologies.
Most of us that travel want and do conference presentations, symposium presentations, want 20 to 30 minutes. It's hard to make a good case for what you're doing. And you spend so much time in the research and you want to share it and you want feedback, and you can't really get that in a 10-minute. And I understand with big conferences, it's important to have these lightning talks, but it doesn't do much for the intellectual experience, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, in my experience with this particular community, it has worked before, because then towards the end of the day, we look at the themes and we decide where to continue. But probably next year, it'll be 10-minute presentation, 20-minute dialogue on that topic, something like that. But, you know, we will have almost a year to discuss that, so that's fine. But then I do have a question for everyone here in the community. Leon and Dini and I were having a few seconds before you arrived, and we talked about reading in VR. And that is, of course, central to our topic, but there's two aspects of it that I really want to hear opinions in the room. One is, should we try to accommodate everyone or specific types of readers, both in terms of reader abilities and in terms of what kind of content to be read? Obviously, in the future, yes to all of the above, but for the short-term research side. And Fabian.
In my opinion, when we were a bit unsure, which I would argue is the case here, I think being too specific and like disappointingly specific, like for a very small audience, with the prospect of learning from it and eventually broadening up, like people should be excited by the prospect and say, oh, I need this or I need that in terms of accessibility, etc. Rather than trying to address an immense audience that doesn't even exist, and then to never actually make it. So I personally had more success by doing something, and then people are like, oh, but I want, I don't know, remote control of content that is too far because I use it in the train or in the plane, or oh, I cannot do this. I need a, I don't know, a higher resolution screen or a bigger font or whatnot. But let people be disappointed by how narrow it is, rather than a philosophical discussion, in my opinion. I think having something too small, or not short-sighted, but nearly at first, and then expanding is usually more successful.
Yeah, I mean, also good for the more general discussion here. I'd like to hear what Michael has to say, being new in the community and doing work on this. But I'm really thinking that at least for what I'm applying for the grant for, that it should be primarily for editing. Because reading a already written text just to read it, I think there isn't that much that can be done. You're going to open the text, you're going to move it back and forth a bit. And it also wouldn't really use the space that we get in XR very well. But to solve the challenge of editing a large document, that's when I think we could start using the space. And then you read, little bits, but you're essentially compiling. I wonder if that makes sense to the group.
Yeah, I think editing will be a whole other story, because you not only need to make the text accessible, but also make your tools accessible for editing it, which will also need space and some kind of affordance. But to stick to the reading part, I think it will need to be automatically context and person specific quite soon, because from my experience, especially with social VR spaces, the needs and situations are so diverse that a designer cannot anticipate the requirements for each text box and each snippet that they put in the environment, or the space that they create, which will be a canvas they create to fill it with text. So if we think of reading a book versus a group of people sitting in a virtual room for maybe a virtual conference or a poster session or stuff like that, or also user interface elements already do the trick, and you have 2-meter distances and 5-meter distances and 10-meter differences, and different preferences for the text size already offline for people that differs harshly. There's so many of these parameters that need to be considered to have a nice reading experience for everyone, that this must be automated somehow and not predefined by the designer, in my opinion.
So we're experimenting this right now. Let me mention that Rob is in the room, so he's the person whose game that we are adapting. So let me lower my hand now. So there's things you can do pretty quickly and easily to make work accessible. I see Carl's getting ready to jump in. He's an accessibility expert. There's ways that we're experimenting in the lab right now with, sounding information as opposed to reading it, color for color blindness, seated as opposed to standing experiences. There's some real simple things that can be done that broadens your audience. And I think that the idea of readability is not limited to accessibility for people that are hard of reading. It's for everybody. So there are limitations for a broad use of reading, and I know we're going to be overcoming that soon, hopefully sooner than later. But in the meantime, we're making a game right now. We're delivering in December. So how are we working through these issues in the moment and thinking about a large gaming audience? And we're doing that right now, Michael. So I'll be chronicling that in the white paper that'll go with this so that people can see what we've done. And hopefully a lot of those problems that we face will go away in 6 months, in a year, or sooner. Do you know?
We'll miss it.
So
Miss what? The problems?
We'll miss the change. We'll finish too soon.
Michael, a question on the different issues you brought up. How do you feel that differs from text in other environments?
Well, other environments, we have more predefined surfaces. We have less flexibility and put more effort into adapting the situation to the needs. In VR, many of these things don't come, they're not as given because, for example, physical rules don't apply that much. So if we compare the fidelity of a VR conference, I think is an interesting example, because people try to resemble the original so closely in some aspects. For example, the spatial relationship among participants to foster exchange and random encounters. But then again, if you put up a presentation on the wall or on the wall somewhere in the room, people start flying around. So they have that M5 theater with different levels, so everybody has a good view at that. And quickly different rules, also social dynamics, apply because we adapt the situation as the text is fixed in that area of the virtual environment where it is.
Yeah. And we have Brandel here. Hello, Brandel. Just a brief thing first. We now have a Vision OS compatible version of Reader, which is nice.
It's very exciting.
So yeah, I'm wondering how to get you on the test list, but it's all a bit sophisticated for me at the moment. But anyway, I'll tell you when it's testable, and then you can give us the real deal. Yeah, the conversation was, I'm just going to give you the link here, all of you, also Carl, who joined. The videos are up, the page is done. We're discussing a little bit text in VR along the lines of the focus of what kind of text to look at first, and to what degree to consider different users, and the traditional issues, but in a very non-traditional environment, maybe. I am using TestFlight, but it's not as straightforward as there are different things in Xcode, and I haven't been able to integrate it into my own Xcode to do that yet. And I just got a question on it. Yeah, because the thing is, with an XR environment, yes, you absolutely do have control over every pixel and every aspect and everything. So we kind of have to decide, each one of us with our research, how we want to use that, how far we want to go into modifying that, and what kind of reading we're looking at. I was saying earlier, for those who weren't here, that reading is one thing, but reading to edit, as in reading as part of a workflow, is a different kind of reading. And I think XR will be okay, at least with a vision to read an actual book in, but I don't think that will be the primary use case. You'll probably pick up a book to do that. So then the question becomes, what is the point of the extra space? And I would really like to hear if someone has other ideas. I just think that's something a lot of people have to do, is edit the text. And if it's a large text, then to be able to use the space, I think would become quite a useful thing. The silence is thunderous. Leon, no one is talking, just talk.
I was thinking, this is just to sort of continue your thought. Are there other examples where this is sort of solved? I'm just thinking about movies. Movies are supposed to be very accessible for everybody, and subtitles, things like subtitles, there's probably a lot of knowledge what is available of how people consume subtitles. I think most people, they just turn on subtitles, but do we know from maybe we have Carl? Yeah, maybe. Is there any knowledge on how people, for example, with reading problems, consume subtitles of a video or a movie?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I've been looking to establish the connections with the XR accessibility community things too, because there is the whole, there's also descriptive audio and things too. So being able to describe what's going on in the movie to people who are blind, examples. So that's an area where I see AI being able to really help at least take that first cut at coming up with some things there, and I think that'll be a major area of intersection between what we're doing in this community and what they're working on.
There is one large assumption in this discussion, and that is that this discussion will be around not pre-formatted text. In other words, no PDFs. Because if you're reading a PDF, you're reading a PDF. Some processing can be done to it, but not a lot. And, you know, I find PDF useful in specific circumstances, as most of you know, of course, but the act of editing, you use whatever. You know, that's a manuscript. That's a very different kettle of fish. So that's what I'm wondering, what kind of use cases you guys, okay, I'm going to go around the table. And I'm going to ask you all, how do you see, given a fantastic headset, very lightweight, blah, 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 super high resolution, when would you put it on? And I'll start with Leon, because
and the question was, when would you put it on?
Yes, let's say that we're living in a world 10, 15, 20 years in the future, and the headset is super high quality and has no real weight, or you just, when would you use that rather than sit with a traditional screen or read a book or something like that?
Well, I would just like I would use it just to, you know, change my setting, because, for example, if I'm in a co-working space, I sit behind my laptop, and then after a while, maybe 1 hour, at some point, I'm going to the, it's called a bean bag or beanie bag or beanie, something like that. And then, so I sit there for 1 hour, and then I go back. So I think in the same sense, I would put my headset then on the beanie bag, whatever, and turn on my Bluetooth keyboard. I think I would just to be in a different position, and then perhaps I have, so last thing, I have what is called a joy box. So if I'm at work and people send me an interesting article or paper, I put it in my Joy box. It's sort of a bookmark thing. And at other times, if I'm like, okay, now I want to relax a bit, I will sit down and then I will sort of like check some articles from my Joy box. And I think that would be a nice a nice time to also do that with the headset.
I don't know how you answer the question. What I mean is, what type of things would you want to see in the headset that you couldn't easily see with a traditional display?
Well, first of all, 3D models. I like to be inside them and look at them in real size. And second is, yeah, sorry to not fully answer your question, but things are so blurring already. First, I had like headset for this, laptop for that, but things are really starting to blur now since I started to read in my headset as well. So I don't know. I think the real answer is it's not task related anymore. It's more physical Pomodoro related almost.
I think an interesting assumption in that question is that there will be physical screens around in 20 years from now. Because if you have the kind of headsets that you describe, a blank white page, or if you prefer dark interfaces, black screen, and like not a monitor, but rather just a black wall, should do the trick already, and everything else is augmented onto whatever surface you have around. Because if I had a normal screen here and one of those wonderful headsets, I would certainly have some virtual screens to augment this one, and I would read on all of them.
So you're jumping the queue basically by saying that if the headset is that good, why would we need a flat screen? I think that's fair enough.
There's a local company here called RealWear that has produced a headset system that was primarily meant to work with people that are doing things as simple as, doing putting phone wires up, high up on a large pole. And they get up there and they have to make some changes to the wiring, and they don't have access to a manual because they can't hold a manual while they're wiring. So RealWear developed this headsets, not VR, but it's a headset so they can actually read the manual in their headset, right? So they're up there doing that. And so, of course, a simple answer, Frode, is what I want this environment for is to multi-use. So I'm sitting in front of a system. Let's say I'm sitting in my room. I do not need a computer screen to work with. I have access to all my files, what did you call it, Michael? Or your happy file or your
Joy box.
Yeah, ULAN, yeah. So you have this set of files here, and you pull this together. Maybe you're doing your 3D models and you're moving things around in a physical space that's not tied to surface, right? It's all there in front of you, and you're multi-using these objects. Very much like you would do in the physical world, except in the physical world, we can't manipulate digital and physical simultaneously. And we can in these environments. And so I think that's the thing. It's not just looking at digital objects, but as RealWear shows, using the physical with the digital so that we enhance the world we're living in. We're not creating necessarily a new world, but we're living in the world in a new way. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And, no matter what we do, there will be assumptions made when we think about this future, because we just can't know everything completely. So that is important to acknowledge. But also, if we're talking about accessibility, then we are talking about a specific kind of text for a specific kind of opportunity. I think that is a very important research, similar to how accessibility in traditional displays are important. But I do think it is adjacent to looking at the process of editing and so on. And I think, Dini, we agree on the physical, although we may phrase it differently. I do agree with Tim Cook that AR is the way to go, or as they call it, spatial stuff. Because when we did some testing by building a library, and then we showed connections with lines going through the room, they were intensely annoying. Things just floating around in space is not something humans like. It's like walking around in forest with low hanging trees. It's actually really annoying. So the act of being able to draw something into space will be useful. And everything you just said about where things are and how you retrieve it is really, really important. But I do think all of us here are interested in the topic. We kind of need to decide on what use. You know, let's pretend we all work for Apple, not just one of us. And let's say we are actually in charge of marketing of Vision Pro, forget all the other ones, purely because of quality, not for other reasons. And let's say that we're in charge of selling to executives, knowledge workers, those kinds of people. Why in the world with it? You know, I'm sitting here with a 27-inch display. A lot of you have very nice displays. Why in the world would we put on a headset? It's not an obvious question. And, you know, I think editing is a beginning to look at it, but I don't know what that means. So,
Well, I think once
yes, you're
again,
next on the list anyway.
it's bringing the physical and the virtual together, the physical and the digital together in one place. And that's something that we've been working on in the lab for the longest time. Is like, how do you merge those two worlds so that it's seamless, right? And the problem with headsets is that it blinds you to the physical world, and you're only living in the digital virtual world.
Well,
And that's not what humans want right now. We want to live in the world we're living in and see beyond that. And that's
Yeah.
what I think AR does.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we all agree that augmented reality would pass through video, which is what even the Quest Pro and 3 do really quite well. I do think that makes a complete lot of sense. I see both Michael and Rob. Rob, you go first since you haven't spoken yet, and then Michael, please.
I'm just curious about sharing the space, especially for doing editing or combining things. If there's going to be a way, like when you pass somebody your contact information, so that you both share the space and you can work on the same document at the same time. That's one thing that I think would be really useful. I'm thinking now about working with Dina on the hypertext project. If we had it, both of us had it in front of us and could point to things or manipulate things, we could probably get more done. But that means some way of exchanging the AR.
Do you mean differently from screen sharing or using Google Docs together?
Yeah, I mean sharing the same space, the same AR space.
But on a traditional display, even if you just use screen share in the Mac environment, you can choose to take control over the other person's the screen. Okay, Fabian is jumping in on that, but okay, let's put a pin in that, and then Michael, please. Sorry, before we drift completely off. So I'll write a note. Collaboration.
For the collaboration aspect specifically, I'll briefly share my screen, because that's what I worked on a bit today. Let me know if you can see it, please.
Yeah.
So for a bit of context, I'm working on a workshop for kids on a Saturday morning. I'm making it like a little game where Penguin will have to solve puzzles through programming, so you can see bits of codes there. But what I noticed, it's more and more the collaborative aspect, not just because I don't have enough headset for everyone, but also because, otherwise you might feel a little bit lonely, basically, especially when you discover what it is. So I started to work on this. So there are already a framework on how to share position, so the little head shaking, for example. And what I added today was the hands. So the hands are just white spheres. It's very minimalist, let's say, but it's precisely to highlight the point you were doing, you were sharing, and it's also because I want to point at stuff. Let's say if I have a physical book, or if I have a virtual book, or if I have, let's say, a page on that book, especially in a pedagogical context, I want to like do the act of pointing. So a sphere is not ideal for this, but let's say it's still better than no hands, basically. And I can still like wave, or I can make the motion of going from, let's say, my face to the target. So I'm pretty convinced that in order to collaborate, so either to learn or to edit a document or something, then yes, you need either in a full VR space, if you want to focus on this, or in MR, or in something where you see a background, but basically some ways to collaboratively manipulate the thing, being either a document or a subset or like a set of documents. But that's why this afternoon I work specifically on showing those hands, is because otherwise you have this super cool hand tracking and you can grab virtual objects relatively naturally, but you're still alone in your space, let's say. Yeah, I think there is quite a bit to do there, especially if we explore like more micro gestures and way to grab things and whatever. So I did the sphere for the hands. The next thing I'm working on now is to send, let's say, events. So if you pinch, let's say, a document or part of a document, you don't necessarily want to share the precise motion to everybody in that virtual space, but you want people to know, let's say, you highlight that this document has been grabbed so that others can either see it, or that it's restricted, not two people can grab it, whatever interactions. But yeah, then it's extending, let's say, gestures to a social aspect.
That makes a lot of sense, and thank you for having a look at that. Over to Michael.
Yeah, I'm glad you jumped in. A good thing about the virtual hands raising is that they don't become heavy over time, so all good. I think the notion of collaborating in a shared virtual and physically mixed environment will be super interesting to explore. First step will probably be representing people before we talk about representing text and tools. Thinking about those approaches of Microsoft Mesh, for example, of having physical collaboration of several co-located users at the same time as virtual users who enter that space, all on the same level of capabilities in that environment. So that will be really interesting to bring people together in that sense. Once we figured that out, I think it will be marvelous to work on the same document, thinking about the editing possibilities as if we would have one huge computer screen where everybody has their own keyboard and their own mouse and their own way of manipulating simultaneously, and also organizing knowledge and documents and other kind of media together. I thought of this paper here where they explored how people use physical affordances and their shared physical environment to stack things, to group things, to semantically arrange it in the broadest sense, to fulfill some tasks or to make sense of information or whatever tasks they had on their mind.
Michael, please leave this up when you're done talking. I think it's a really good background for us to continue the conversation. That didn't mean you should finish talking, sorry, whenever you're finished.
Yes, I was actually pretty much finished. I just wanted to say I'll put this to the chat.
Yeah, please put the URL in the chat. Does anyone know this paper? I find it I find it really fascinating, the notion of fully furnished and side furnished. It's useful language, isn't it? Yes, Fabian.
A quick trick also, it's just in the context of the workshop, so I'm cheating a bit, but in order to have all the document, let's say, in the same virtual space and thus digital one, have my little Raspberry Pi Zero that is used as a hotspot. But we can imagine that on this, you would have, let's say, a 2D web page where the kids will bring whatever assets they have, either files or 3D assets and whatnot, and basically just like a physical space where you toss in the middle of the physical table whatever documents you need to bring in. So I admit maybe I'm a bit naive, but in terms of exchanging documents, the annotation, and maybe some form of identity, like a contact point as an email, I don't see it as a hard problem as long as you use, for example, open format and some interoperable formats. I don't think it's too tricky. I think where to put it, let's say, whatever it is maybe trickier to figure out, and how to collaborate on them is trickier to figure out. But the technical aspect of sharing documents, I don't think it's too hard.
Thought more about the interaction aspects. For example, if you consider the image on the top right, I think it's very interesting how all the snippets with image and some accompanying text are rotated or cylindrically arranged around the user that probably stood in the middle of all this and had a nice glance on everything. While if there is another person standing next to them, some things will not be readable anymore because they look at it sideways. So as soon as only one other user enters the room, the whole setup doesn't work anymore. Should this automatically be adapted? Should every element with text in the room be readable to everybody in the room?
You're talking about billboarding partly, right?
What's that?
That's where text will always face the human.
Billboarding.
Right, but I think the question is which human? Because
Okay.
yeah, if you have a shared reality, then billboarding needs to be to a specific viewer rather than all of them. And as soon as you start to customize the presentation to the individual participants, then you've lost the coordination between everybody to have some underlying ground truth. And you can do that, but the question is which is the greater benefit in terms of knowing what's true versus being able to have the most legible view over it. I've been surprised by how unaccustomed people are within a virtual or augmented space to understand and consider the social implications of the way that they're arranging their vantage points. So people in sort of shared calls will sort of arrange themselves so that they see everybody, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are visible to other people and things like that. So that's going to be an interesting sort of negotiation. Also a really great motivator for people to expand the field of view so that it has sort of human level, like normal human level sort of ranges, because the social implications of the environment that we have built for ourselves and the arrangements that we create in order to sort of coexist are also based on sort of mean human faculties, not that they're mean, but that we all have about 180 field of view, a little bit more for the most part, and most people have peripheral vision damage from head injuries and stuff like that. So, but the best headsets available today only get to about 100 degrees of view, which necessarily sort of limits those things. And there are disparities in terms of what that means is comfortable to do conversationally, where you're standing around and you're sort of peripherally aware of a large number of people in their movement. But yeah, I would say to the original question, being in work with other people is almost always today going to be better than looking around a screen or any of those kinds of places, because by definition of being sort of up and in a social space, you can share work with one, maybe two people over your shoulder, where you're at a terminal and you have all of the great controls, the mouse, the keyboard, trackpad, whatever you need. And that's a really great place for being able to do really fast typing, being able to do lots of input there. But only a couple people can see it once. Otherwise, you need to have some kind of split modality presentation where you're on a computer screen and then they're looking at it somewhere else. And then nobody really gets to see each other through it in terms of being able to discuss and negotiate manipulations and changes to it. So any kind of group work basically at all is, no matter how bad the VR environment is better today. I think when you have the right tools and the right intermediating sort of technologies. Second is, I think that like the pixels that you have on your screen are on a computer screen are good, but they're so fixed. You have no ability to move things around. And when you have a good screen, like a really good screen, a good VR display screen, and you can just move things so that you have them around you, it's really incredible. So having the ability to do that actually really makes up for a lot of the lack of refinement and input modality. So like anytime you want to have people or a broader sort of breadth of displays, which can be a lot of times, having the ability to spread out multiple things that you're attending to now and later and things like that. So yeah, I think that those will only get more. It's not that they will get to be more, but that the benefits to things on those axes is going to get more visible, and people's bias will shift, maybe slowly, but inexorably toward only ever using ambient computing of this kind. Maybe projection, other things like that as well. But going to the difficulty of installing physical pixels in a space is going to seem silly and wasteful in comparison to just carrying the pixels around on your eyes. I'm done, sorry.
I saw, okay, yeah, all right, Fabian.
So it's going to be a little bit awkward. I just to point out that I was walking a bit before, and now I'm not walking. I'm sitting back on my chair, and I move my screen. So I have a movable desk, electric one. My screen can be turned in every direction. And Leon mentioned before the beanbag and changing context. I think one of the pretty obvious use case for me is also having the freedom not to be stuck behind a screen. It sounds a little bit superficial, but I think I do quality thinking when I'm not like completely mobile, except if it's by choice. For example, sometimes I sit on my chair in the living room and I have the e-ink display oriented so that I don't have to move. But basically, being able to do knowledge work while still organizing myself however I want. To me, that's a pretty, and that's also why it's not just a screen, but it's a volume, or being able to manipulate within a volume and the way that is comfortable for me, even if it might be for nobody else. But I think to me, that's a pretty clear added value.
Thanks, Fabian. Leon.
Yeah, that's a good point, Fabian. Michael, could you put that screen back again? So yeah, I was just realizing something based on what Fabian and Brendel said. Actually, they saved me thousands of dollars, I think. I realized that looking at this and thinking back of the first websites, we started with websites where everybody had sort of the same screen resolution. So this was the way to go, and was easy to accommodate. And then we got all these other devices like smartphone, tablet, and websites suddenly had to be responsive. And this almost quadrupled the amount of testing and development which went into a website. And I think looking at this screen now, I think we're starting with XR here. We have AR situations, we have VR situations. I think it's a sort of a big pitfall to try to, you know, design for a responsive experience. I think already pretty early in the making of some kind of AR or VR app, one has to choose which direction to go, and make that a really big aspect of the whole project, and sort of maybe even the research before choosing one direction is really important, because I think a project can easily fail if you're trying to accommodate for all the types of AR layouts, collaborative A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I think it will become some kind of dream on paper and a developer nightmare. So that's my few cents.
Okay, that was your few cents. I'm going to give you a few dollars now. Just to go in on kind of the bigger issues. I'm looking here at Dini, who typed her response to the question. Merge the physical and virtual worlds, collaborate, and move away from computer screen. My comments on that, actually, please.
Well, those are the answers that other people gave. This is what I took down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Responses. Okay. So I'm just trying to get it on paper, so to speak.
No, that's great. But Michael, can you put it back up again, please? Because it's relevant to what I'm
sure.
saying.
You really like the.
We have the link, so other people
can.
No, I know we have the link, but sorry, it's so great to see you and this. So here's the thing. Merge the physical and virtual. That's called AR. We all know that's probably in most cases going to be great. So that one's in a way obvious and important, and we agree. And then we have number 3, move away from the computer screen. I think that's almost the same as 1. Collaborate is of course important. We can of course collaborate in 2D already, but one thing, like the symposium last week was really, after the initial few minutes, actually really stress-free and very wonderful. I really appreciated the dialogue. And today has been okay, but when I look at this article, I get quite stressed. And the reason I get stressed on a very selfish level, first of all, is, oh no, we thought this was so special and real people are doing it. A little bit, because this is quite sophisticated what they're showing. But beyond that, how often are we going to need to have pictures of animals floating around in our office? Right, and I certainly don't say that it's a criticism to them. This is a recorded talk, and I hope to be introduced to them by Michael later, so that'll be great. But the reason I'm saying it is just trying to be very, very honest and clear about the use case thing. And this is where I talk about editing, because doing something like Minority Report, where you move imagey things around, yes, I get it. Similarly, operating a machine, learning how to do a physical thing, yes, I get it. These are quite obvious. But if we're talking about text-heavy things, one of the problems about text, I think, is that text is very non-visual. Text has to be foveal. You really have to have it in the center of attention to really make sense out of it. You know, text as a general shape, often just nothing, right? So that's why I'm thinking, how can we push towards, you know, we find some executive person, I'm saying executive because they're the ones with money, right, at this point. We say, oh, you work on your laptop all day. This is better, but it's not just a big display. How can they really do more with text-heavy stuff? I really would like to hear more comments on that. So if we look at these 4 images, if they're all articles, it's probably going to be an absolute mess. If they're all attributes of articles, you know, that word metadata, maybe it gets a bit more useful. But I would really like to push you to think about maybe as a starting point, an academic article that has text and images and graphs and all that stuff. How do we impress someone when they put on their thinking cap?
Well, academic are fields. I don't know about all of them. Certainly, ACM has a pretty good tradition in this. Is have poster sessions, and poster sessions are a really interesting exercise, both in their underlying science, but also or their underlying field, but also in the act of visual communication at levels of detail. You know, a good poster, and I've worked at companies very early on where we've helped folks build winning posters, and one of the things that we did there was turn them into comic strips to create dialogues and have sort of implicit reactions based on the characters and things like that. Having the idea that, you know, there's this real estate that needs to be encoded at multiple levels of detail where it nevertheless has to remain static. So I think that one of the things that visual communication needs is to be able to encode for itself at these multiple scales of view. You don't look at a book by standing across the room from it. You are flipping through the pages, but that means that other pages are completely invisible while or obscured while the page that you're currently on is in full view. And that's kind of more akin to the way that we look at computers today with the same level of zoom. So, but I think also there are more successful books for that. Like if you've ever looked at a physics textbook, they have not just a lot of diagrams, which is very helpful for the visual communication, but also a tendency to create a visual lexicon of multiple forms of informational presentation. So you have info boxes, and you have asides, and you have examples, and you have test questions, and you have answers, and you have preambles, and they all have adequately sort of distinct forms that you can recognize that by flipping through without even stopping so long as to be able to parse any of the characters in those things beyond what's completely involuntary by reading things like heading chapters and stuff like that. I would like to see people develop a modality where they understand that that is a valuable thing to be able to expand beyond that. I've always enjoyed that format, and I think that more people would benefit from understanding and hopefully having tools to be able to participate.
Yeah, yes, and on that, I think you saw Dave Millard and Mark Anderson's paper where they talked about different kinds of hypertext, which can go for the different terms of text as well. So what we are talking about right now is some sort of animal outside, sorry, is text for communication versus text for thinking. I think those are two distinctly different. I have to look, but it sounds like a fox. Sorry, guys. 1 second.
Somebody repeat for thinking, and what's the first?
Sorry about that. Text for thinking and text for communicating. In other words, you can imagine with the hypertext idea, you can have hypertext as a tool for thought, where you make a mess and you do things, but it's for here. And then that is, you construct a hypertextual interface for someone to learn something. And then over to Dini.
Well, I was going to jump on that.
No, I was just going to say, Michael, if you want to unshare now, this is fine. We've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay. So what I was going to say is that for the early part of my research in VR back over a decade ago was in kinesthetic experiences. Like, how do you, and I am interested in teaching because teaching is thinking, right? How do you get people to think? As a teacher, that's my job. And so how do I use VR to help people learn to think better? And kinesthetic learning was a big area that I was interested in because I'm a kinesthetic learner. So movement, touching, haptic feedback, all of those were part of that experience. And that, I think that's important to bring to the forefront of this discussion as well. I mean, that's a big part of this ability for VR to be very important in the classroom experience and in research.
Yeah.
In the more physical and 3D we make that also reading experience as such, the better it would support that. I wanted to jump onto the use case question and the cluttered spaces with the animal images and stuff like that, which doesn't really happen that much in our everyday work life. I think there are so many situations where
Hang on. Let me just say bye to Danny properly.
Yes, thank you, Danny.
I'm sorry to
Right.
interrupt, but I need to go to campus. And let me remind everybody that tomorrow we're having the special launch for Bill Bly's We Descend. And I'll send the note to the invitation to Frodo. Maybe he can disperse it to everybody later.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
it's
thank
9
you.
o'clock Pacific Daylight Time.
Okay.
Pacific Daylight Time, yeah. So
Right.
anyway,
Thank you, Danny. Thank
Bye.
good to meet you. Bye. So I think if we had the possibilities already, we would make much more use of it already, because already nowadays it's quite a mess how I arrange different documents and how I try to link them cognitively, but it's stuck in tabs and it's stuck in folders and hidden behind hyperlinks, and it's just not a visible clutter. It's somewhat out of sight, which makes it maybe also cognitively lighter. But then again, can think of situations and of people where this limitation was circumvented by, for example, if we talk about academic papers, by printing out many, at least front pages of papers to arrange them in the room or maybe arrange them on the floor. So you can sort them and you can connect them and reference them. These are things that already happen, but as a workaround and not as we would be able to virtually afford it in even 3D space.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fabian, I just wanted to interject really briefly about the Brundle carpet that Dini kind of made us think about. For those of you who may not be aware, Brundle took a lot of our early notes and he turned it into a magic flying carpet with colors and waves. We should not ignore that level of experimentation. Brundle, while Fabian is talking, could you please dig up an image or something of that to show everyone?
Oh yeah, sure. No, I think I've got the page still up. I could build it. So it was just what it was. It was a map of one of these conversations and the YouTube automated transcript, and then the running total of the word frequency of every word that was uttered through the conversation. So you have with a sort of trying to use some kind of filter to ease them out, because obviously one word only occurs at a time, and so there would be very spiky occurrences. But sort of trying to smooth it out so you can see those cumulative totals rise and fall, and then having the ability to gesturally manipulate them and look at different parts of it, and to sort of elevate the different words and see them. And yeah, it was in 21 or 22 YouTube transcript, I believe. So it was for a specific video, just because that's all I did. No, I think. Oh, maybe. Oh, I see. I'll have to fix it. I made a video of it too, didn't I? I can fix it as well, but I will grab the video first because that's probably easier. Your video. And then using the Quest headset and its controller to be able to lift up individual pieces of it so that you could highlight one section of it at a time. Graph paper, that's what it's called. Oh, and I can share the screen, I guess, as well. So I'll put it on this monitor, and I'll share this one. So you can see here that all of the words, and obviously the most frequent words are always going to be the most frequent. So you can see those really simple words like into and they and than up the top, but it's several meters long out the back of me there. But having the ability to manipulate it and sort of lift it up and have sort of a seeming heft to that sort of carpet was really interesting in terms of being able to have a physicality and a texture to it. And it made me feel, I was watching the British Pathé videos of people sort of manually creating artisanal wallpaper at the time, and was inspired and intrigued by the way that they were skilled craftspeople who had such a tangible relationship with the media that they were being really careful with, but they were able to be relatively sort of not rough, but like bodily with being able to kind of heft it around and lift it and manipulate it. They knew every sort of aspect of when it would tear and all of the material characteristics, and they weren't particularly shy about manipulating it in that way. So I really like that. I will actually show another couple videos if that's okay. So
I ask first, what's on the x-axis? Is it the location in the text?
Yeah, it was the location in the video, so that the sort of the time axis of how long through the video these things happen. So there were a lot of ums at the very beginning, and they trailed off as everybody got more comfortable with it. It's the sort of thing that would be really easy to be able to dump any given transcript into it. So it would be cool to be able to do that. I also have, is it earlier or later? Let me see. Oh yeah, the YouTube Wordle generator was another one sort of similar to that. I actually wrote a bookmarklet. I think it's around still and probably still works, where you just click on it and it creates the word cloud of the entirety of a YouTube video. So this is one from David Graeber. It's a pretty long video. What does it say the running time was? Maybe I'm not sure, but yeah, really cool just to be able to kind of get that. And this was in 2D on the page. I just made you can make bookmarklets where instead of building a web page, because you don't get to edit YouTube, but you can build scripts that you can just run on YouTube and use that as a link that you just click. And yeah, so like it really interesting as I mentioned the information there. One of the funny things about this is that it actually is 3D, as you can kind of see, but because I never make any use of that third dimension, you don't see any sort of consequences of it. Another one I would like to show, I guess, if that's okay, in relation to sort of textual experimentations, is how do I get back to page 1? There we go. I think why? Is this what a prototype's prototype? And it is, just go to the short one. This is a representation of an article called What a Prototype's Prototype. It was published by some folks at Apple in '97. And this is all 9,000 words of it. One of the things that I've done here is, this is probably too much information to be sort of read and looked at like this, but it's the regions of the page are colored. The regions of the document are colored so that this first section, the model applied, is sort of has this white color, and then once there are sort of subsequent sections, then they are in different colors and different environments to be sort of identifiably distinct, and so you have a better memory of it. You can sort of also observe other people sort of standing around and seeing those things. So this isn't real, this is just in Blender, but as a sort of a basis for understanding what an article is. And the benefit of virtual reality and digitally mediated space like this is that you have the ability to create exhibitions like this for anything. It doesn't have to be the world's best article. It doesn't have to be one of the nation's most beloved research scientists or anthropologists or dinosaur fossil enthusiasts. It can be anything, and you can cohabit that space with other people who are interested, or you cannot, depending on the benefit. The other thing is that all of these objects in it are from illustrations in the paper. The paper looks like this. So the paper is just this. And so all of those objects that were in it are these 2D objects. So that's the sticky notes. But I think it's really instructive and interesting to be aware that they are in the blue section. That they are sticky notes, that what somebody meant by that was that they really were physical sticky notes, and that next thing is a physical arrangement of some pieces of paper. So this is, you can kind of tell from the implication in the illustration, but they were paper, and then this is a physical model from the Knowledge Navigator video that John Scully commissioned in 1990. So that's this, but what's really, I think, more interesting for me is being able to see this physical size and shape of the artifact that was sort of delivering that message. Anyway, that's more than Frode asked me to show. So,
but thank you, and lots to thank. I think Fabian is itching to go.
I can survive. No, it's just a little, because just before it was a mention of how do you say, not making it tangible, but interaction that are slightly more physical. And it's I don't know how many people experience this, but you can now get gloves and hand tracking still work with them. So if you wear the gloves, they have little actuator. Like, it just vibrates the same way that if you take a console joystick or something like this. So it's not very complex or but it's timely, it's precise. That means that if you touch a thing, or if you virtually try to grab an object, it can vibrate. Again, it's very basic vibration, but it does something, and it does something to your hand, to your body, and then to your mind, which is, you don't feel like you're touching the real object, but you feel you're touching something. And I think it just, let's say, a reminder that this is commercial technology today. It's not something in the future. It's far from perfect, and you don't have any, let's say, force feedback, but you have something. And I think in terms of manipulating content, being text or something else, you can really, for example, when you highlight or you touch a piece of text, and you're going to either have an interaction with it, being manipulating it, moving it, or editing it, the fact that you can already today in commercial hardware, and not something, let's say, too expensive, you can already feel some of those virtual objects. Let's say, I just wanted to put that as a reminder out there. It's not a future or an upcoming technology. It's a past technology. It already works. It's not crazy expensive. So you can have hand tracking with let's say, a headset that is quite affordable, without any desktop, any computer to plug into, and already have this kind of interaction where you have some kind of something slightly tangible, let's say, not just waving hands in the air. That's today.
Completely agree with you. And for those who haven't seen it, here's my Obsidian tool. Hands need something to hold. So this makes me think of two things, metadata and body. It's a shame Peter's not here today. He has to deal with some house things, but he's very much about what he calls the Benedictine cyberspace, which is quite abstract and quite annoying in this context. But obviously it has to fit what the human being is. So all the comments about making things fit in the room is really, really important. But then you look at the exciting stuff that Fabienne has done, where, for instance, where your watch might be, that's your clipboard. You can have different things here. So we can start, and this is so hard to think about, but you know, there's a shoot 'em up called, well, I don't even remember, it's not very good, on the Quest 2, where everything has to be taken from your body. If you want to look at the map, it's on your back. If you want to use the radio, it's here, every single thing, which is just a fantastically interesting thing. Imagine if we can start literally embodying different kinds of knowledge in our system, right? I mean, just as a joke, imagine walking backwards to undo, right? Just no, I didn't want to do that, so I'll go backwards. But it also goes to the really important topic that I keep hammering about and all of you agree on, metadata. I really think that if we can as a community, and Michael, you just, you know, dropped in hot oil here in this context. If we agree on some sort of a workflow, it's much easier to have these discussions because the metadata to allow for editing, the metadata to allow for reviewing transcript, like the Brandl carpet, you know, they are different metadatas. There are different needs, and you know, also metadata for different kinds of reading, right? So in order to think more focusedly, and in order to maybe do some prototyping, I really think we need to agree on a workflow, because I don't want to just do the fake things that we're saying. Sorry, what is Fabienne saying here? Yeah, the wrist one. Yeah, thank you for putting a link into that. If you haven't seen it, please do that now. Pretty clever, right?
And a quick note on this briefly, just also well, to backtrack, you can also use your watch to have vibration. It's not the whole hand, but that's also visible today. No need for extra hardware. And the wrist thing, what's in my opinion especially interesting is your wrist is always there. And when I say there, you all know without even thinking where it is. So it means it's a shortcut in the sense that you can drag things on it. It exists. So when you tap on it, you really tap on your wrist, and it's, yeah, you can put your hands anywhere, and it always will be something you find without thinking. So I think that's
not just a heuristic, but a heuristic, right?
I'll leave it at that.
I have much more to say, but Leon, I know you need to go soon, so please.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the last thing you said. Focus on the metadata. I do like that idea. I mean, that's the dream. However, I also think that getting to the metadata requires something to look good, even though it could be fake, and also a sort of code good. It should also sort of be doable code-wise, and then you can sort of extract some metadata, or sort of create some nice metadata ideas around that. I do think this is a sort of triangle what has to sort of like go in cycles to get to metadata. In my opinion, I think I would be careful with first writing down the metadata and then trying to make it look good and code good, because that can I have a feeling that could end you up in some kind of sort of Ted Nelson area, where the ideas are fantastic or the metadata is fantastic, but the underlying architecture can be tricky.
Right.
So I'm pushing a bit back on your metadata.
Okay, so let's use, for the sake of argument now, my definition of metadata, because so we all have slightly different perspectives. Data that says what data is. And that may not, I'm not talking about the appended stuff, that's expensive and all of that. But for instance, already an author and reader, you can view headings in a document plus only glossary terms. They're important because the author has added them, because the author thinks they're important. That's useful. There's also view only names and headings. These are not metadata in the boring sense. And also we have references, and right now I'm going through absolute hell because Apple's done stuff with OS stuff. That means my reference exports from author are not working well, and it's awful. But it does really highlight the importance of it. So simple stuff that is relatively obvious is in an editing environment, just to have a wall full of the references you have used, maybe as actual books or something. Also something Peter has touched upon. So you can choose which view is foregrounded. My main advisor at university right now, he really thinks that the reference section should not be a second-class part of a document. So imagine reading a document based on the reference section being the core, right? You look at what has the student or person cited, and then you go back to see how it's in the document. So what we're talking about here is very, very, very flexible ways that we can atomize the document and choose what to pull forward and what not to pull forward. And when it comes to the Brandl carpet and the references, I can imagine if we do this right, such incredibly beautiful things on our wall where maybe the references are shown on a timeline. So you can really see instantly yourself, what period of time have I not cited from, right? But all of these things, if we have the data of metadata or just cleaned up data, can be possible. But this is where I keep pushing for can we at least initially decide on a workflow that all of us can go and think about enhancing that particular workflow? And then maybe we'll do another one later, but because otherwise it becomes so massive. Fabienne and then Carl.
Very briefly, I think your advisor is onto something in the sense that, putting the reference at the bottom, at the end, and make it optional is even a little bit insulting in the sense that, okay, when you write a document, you do propose a novel idea, hopefully, but like the expression standing on the shoulder of giants, like the references are really core to the idea. That's like what justify, or at least, if you know your stuff, you're not inventing everything. And thus the references and how to explore them, I think is indeed, and putting it first, let's say, or on equal footing as the document itself, is definitely something very interesting it genuinely is something exciting to try to do. Like, how is it going to be not the reference themselves, but let's say quotes with the reference, and how you can maybe see how you can dig into it, but without giving back on the actual document you started to read. So I think that's I obviously don't have any answer to this, but I think the prospect definitely deserve a real exploration.
That was Fabienne saying, I agree. Carl, please.
Yeah, I guess I'll post the link to there's a Nuwa, NUWA pen. I've been seeing ads for it pop up, and it seems interesting for not just the device itself, but they have a whole process for like augmented notes and text conversion as ways to do it. The other thing, almost going back to Engelbart and stuff, and this is something I thought about for you, is if you could go through and highlight the sentences that end with a question on a document. So it's like be able to pull out the explicitly the questions are being explicitly asked in a document. I think that would be amazing.
That's very clever, Carl. And that is, of course, something we can do now, but we haven't done. I will look into that. I like that a lot. Or we can also have a similar view, highlight question and the first sentence after question as a beginning, and then you should be able to dig in more. That's really quite cool.
And then even potentially pull it out into one of the other, being able to do like a
You see, the thing is,
dialogue map or a debate graph kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about for my dissertations. It's like building up these maps of around a particular question kind of thing, and then it's weaving a coherent narrative through those questions is kind of what I'm seeing as the approach to trying to constructing the dissertation.
so guys, do you know what Meta are calling the kind of desk accessory types things they're going to be adding to AR, where you can have a clock in the corner, a calendar, whatever?
I think augments.
Augmentations, yeah. I think that's very rude and very cool all at once.
For the augments, there is somebody doing an app on to paint, I think Vermilion, and he's not saying it's an augment, but what he's doing now is you can snap some of your past painting on your physical wall. I mean, you have the location of it, and couple of people like me ask him, okay, are they going to be augments? And I think it's interesting, especially let's say for knowledge work, is you have an app, whatever it does, maybe it's for reading, maybe it's for editing, maybe it's for both, maybe it's something else, but will it produce an augment so that the output of your work in that application is going to be more permanent in the is going to be more permanent within your environment. So I think that's something I started to consider. I will probably not have access to augment because I'm imagining it's going to be native, not WebXR. But yeah, being able to save, let's say.
Carl, are you leaving too?
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah, that's fine. See you later. Thanks for dropping by.
Okay, yeah. See you.
Sorry, Fabian. Sorry.
You know what? I'm offended. I'm going to leave too.
I'm not going to say thanks 3 times in a row, so you can leave anytime you want.
Well, I'm still leaving. No, jokes aside, I'll take this opportunity. I must escape at 30, and I think it's funnier if I do as if I'm offended and leave now.
It might be funnier, but I mean, the problem we've had with Future of Text for the first 10 years is people talk about different texts, which is great when it's just reading an article, but in a discussion, it becomes very. So I hope we can consider a little bit workflowish. Yes, Fabian, you have permission to leave when you need to.
Sorry, bye everyone.
Bye. Yeah.
One of the things that one of the people who claims to be a co-inventor of Google Cardboard, remember Google Cardboard was the absolute cheapest thing you could possibly do to turn a smartphone into a head-mounted display. But it means that it didn't have any input and it didn't have 6 degrees of freedom. It was only 3 degrees of freedom device. Some folks have come up with an interesting way of doing it, and I want to get the Google Cardboard folks to be aware of it, but I haven't figured out the right into the team yet. But the person said that VR is a mistake and that they want to work on AI instead. And I think that they couldn't be wronger about it. One of the things that they didn't capture and understand because Google Cardboard didn't have it was input and the ability to kind of richly encode input and understand the importance of the intentionality that the companies had it. text has always been this really interesting set of decisions about what to encode as being significant with reference to the characters, the arrangement, and all that other kind of stuff. Immersive computing that is currently most easily facilitated by doing your computing through a spatial computing device like a VR headset or something like that, affords the opportunity to be much more inclusive about what can be encoded as being sort of significant and relevant for the purposes of constituting a document and understanding how it's formed and stuff like that. I actually think that while that's really exciting, it also puts us at cross purposes with a lot of the sort of tradition of creating a document and creating a delineation of stuff that we think is important versus the stuff that we arbitrarily had to do in order to get that encoding in there. So, when we write, there's no thought of the fact that there's a character order particularly, even though some people very occasionally have different character orders in English, and that makes their writing look weird. They don't in Chinese because the rubric is that it's essential that it goes that way. But beyond that, there's also like whether somebody starts with headings and fills them in, or tries to go through a scan line, things like that. And so those things aren't the text. Those things are related to how somebody produces the text, and they aren't sort of performative components of it that represent some kind of channel of information. And it's a little bit weird for people to think that they might get it there. It's also interesting because my daughter can't write very well. She doesn't like using her fingers in that way, and so she's been trying to do text to speech, but you can't really edit with text to speech. You can only write with it, and so if you are trying to do your thinking and you're doing your arrangement and stuff like that, it's next to impossible so far. And yeah, so I think that having the ability to encode all of your movements and actions and inputs and things like that, as well as the sort of the final document that's constructed as a consequence, is going to be really interesting, and it's going to be quite challenging for people who are used to being able to say like, oh, don't think about how I made this. My methods are perfect, don't question them. But I think that it's going to be really valuable, hopefully for would-be new producers as well as the people who actually produced it, to have some aspect of that temporality more easily exposable and exposed in a new medium.
Yeah. We talked earlier about the augmentations, and I just realized that the augmentations, as Quest want to make them, things stuck in the room, is quite.
They are just called augments, by the way.
Augments. Oh, thank you. It's a bit incompatible with the notion of the head-mounted display as a thinking cap, because it's ambiently there, but it's going to be a long time since someone's going to spend the entire day with a headset. So, why would you want that? You probably want it to be more like a concert hall, where you go into it, all your favorite authors are over there, maybe as icons or whatever. Here's the semi-irony. Almost all of this we can do on a normal large monitor. And we can do it really, really well. But here we have the opportunity to do all of it at once. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. So instead of...
I'm not sure if it will be that isolated or specialized in taking it on and off so much. I think once the hardware is there, it will replace so many devices ubiquitously, away from that device-centric interaction mode of having your attention focused somewhere, but integrating your virtual notifications and information and content of whatever kind into your physical environment, and always have it at hand, whether you're at the bus stop or sitting at your desk or being out for a coffee. It will make it much easier to balance when is virtuality present and not. And sure, you will have your times when you take that thinking cap or that augmentation cap off and be purely offline. But I think most of the times, whenever your phone is nearby at the moment, will be a time when we will have mixed reality, AR, whatever, glasses, contact lenses, whatever on.
I think you are completely right. And it is a little further out, but it's also something that I probably wouldn't want to do myself. Leon, who was here for the Future of Text last week, he told me that on his way home, he put his phone away, kind of as an experiment. He doesn't know London very well, and he managed to get to the airport with no problem. Both not being too bored and not getting lost. London is a well-marked city. And, even though I really love my Apple Watch, there are times where I want to get rid of even that. I just want to be. So even though I agree with you when you put it like that, it'll be like that maybe for some people. I mean, don't forget, some people go to work in a very specific uniform as well. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is the act of, if you just want to read a document, I think most VR, even today, is okay. You hold up even a PDF, it's readable, right? If you want a big display, I think that is kind of solved. And I think that if you want to really focus with a headset, you will read this like a book, but the rest of the room will be like a log cabin or something. So I think that blocking out the world will also be fine. But the real thing I want to highlight is when you're in work mode and not looking around your room and there's a calendar on the wall, but in real work mode, what would you then want your environment to be? So this is why I think it's important for us to kind of agree at different times of the discussion what kind of environment we need. I mean, a lawyer's office is very often dark wood. Supermarket is very specific. It may be that a part of what these things will be is changing slightly the look of your physical room, just for different kinds of things you're doing. And it may be very subtle. To put you in different kind of mindsets and different kind of opportunities. But I'm tired of my own brain just thinking a graph and a murder wall and we're done. Because first of all, that's not as far as we can go. And, there will be many issues there. So that's why when you're in an intense work setting, it'll be really, really interesting what you can do. I mean, one of the little details is I wonder why Apple hasn't explicit support for the Apple Pencil in VR yet. It should be able to be quite parsable. Maybe they even might sell soon one that has a different colored top to make it more clear to the system which is the sharp bit, so to speak. But yeah, it will be multimodal like that. It's such a great example of it becoming more difficult as we think more about it, isn't it? This whole space. People who don't know much about it are us from the beginning. Yeah, it's really simple. So, Michael, now that you've
like
been part of an initial, sorry, who was speaking? I didn't mean to overspeak.
I want to say that I like your PDF example because it illustrates so nicely the limitations.
Sorry,
that
someone's
we
drilling
enforce.
outside. I have to close the window. I can't hear you very well.
Amazing how little we could tell of that, though. That's cool.
Neighbors, not always quiet. Right. Please repeat. Sorry.
We didn't hear a thing.
Oh, it was
Voice canceling.
very well done. Yes.
Yes, I wanted to say that PDF is such a nice example to illustrate the limitations that can come with text and what kind of opportunity we have in VR to design things afresh, to be able to scale it, rearrange, to be able to connect and associate or stack or reference and to augment and to hide. And on so many levels to draw on that potential that we have in VR, not having physical restrictions and not having the restriction of being stuck to a 2D plane. And the PDF example is so nice for that, because we have quite a clear image in our head how restricted we already are on a desktop computer, and showing that in a VR environment, having that PDF document in front of you makes it so obvious how unsatisfying this should be.
I don't agree. No, of course, PDF is very restrictive, but we have to make some decisions. I have a huge, okay, so I'm still at my late age working on my PhD, and one of the nicest discussions I've had with colleagues at the University of Southampton is knowledge is nonlinear. An argument, however, is linear, relatively linear. So ideally, what a document should do is to allow you to take nonlinear knowledge, linearize it to make your point, and then when someone is reading that, they should be able to return it to its nonlinear state. But we shouldn't forget the linear state. So for instance, my PhD work is all about that. It is about presenting something as plain as a Word document or PDF, but it has enough metadata at the end to recreate the connections that made the document. So I wouldn't throw PDF out the window, because it is very, very important also to be able to freeze something and say, this is what I've done, this is what I'm saying, but it should be in a way that can then be exploded, absolutely.
I do like PDF a lot.
Brandel, should I put you on the test flight for iOS Vision OS reader? No.
No, unfortunately, because you don't work for Apple, I can't test your apps and give you feedback about it. That would be preferential treatment.
How do you know I don't work for Apple? Maybe I'm a secret employee. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Preferential treatment, what's wrong with that? That's a good thing. Yeah, there's a bit of...
It would get us in trouble with regulators.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
So Brandel, you do work for Apple?
Yes, I am responsible for the web standards for Apple Vision Pro and for what we call the spatial web in general. So that's working on how Vision Pro is supposed to work on the web, as well as any additions and augmentations that may need to be made to web standards to be appropriate for what we do. So it involves a lot of prototyping. I've done a bunch of stuff internally as well as externally. A bunch of sort of how people will use sort of current things. So what is a webcam? How might people make use of that? How people might use speech, keyboard, all of those kinds of things within the context of a spatial computing device. That's what we're told to call it. And as well as what additions should be made. So something that I am now responsible for is the idea of this inline HTML model element, being able to put 3D models into a page in a way that means that you don't need to use WebXR, you can kind of look at them directly. Really excited about it, but I also need to finish all of the proposals to the W3C for that. We work closely with Meta and Samsung Internet, Chrome, everybody who has any kind of stake in what's called what the W3C calls the immersive web, but I like spatial web because of spatial computing, and I think it sounds neat.
Super exciting.
So Brandel is the most frustrating member of our community. So much knowledge, but only some of it is allowed the Apple box.
Well, the challenge is to keep working for Apple.
Yeah, I think that's actually very well put. So I'm working with Dini, Michael, on a proposal for the Sloan Foundation in Americaland to get some money to do some of this. And I was introduced to them, so they're taking us seriously, which is really nice. And as things get more real, it kind of changes how we view it and what it means to us. And now it's quite stressful that if we act, I'm applying for a large sum of money, and then it turns out the money I'll get is, you know, literally nothing, which is fine. It just means I don't spend the money, but it's a bit hilarious. However, when it comes to delivering things, that's why I want to have more focused dialogue here. You know, we need to figure out what to actually do, because, you know, earlier somebody mentioned the whole Ted Nelson thing. Ted Nelson, I consider quite a close friend, but he doesn't import and export. You know, I don't think we can afford that. I think my view is that if I get this money, 2 years later, put a headset on someone who doesn't quite understand the point of this, and he said, "Oh my God, I can think now." You know, not I can read better, not that. It has to be thinking. And it has to be primarily with text, because text is the least sexy. You know, if you search for the future of text, you find me. I find that horrifying. It's nice for me as kind of a career thing, but shouldn't the big companies have lots of things on, you know, the evolution of text? You know, I'm trying to highlight the issue of why it should be done like that. So that's why I want us together, because, yeah, by the way, if this money comes in, it's to collaborate. You know, it's not I go away and then see you in a year or something. It is for the community to very strongly discuss what should be made. It is to highlight the issues. And kind of in closing for my ramble here is metadata, metadata, metadata. You cannot, a computer cannot do stuff with things that don't know what it is. Right? It's so fundamentally, crucially important. And all the big companies, they will do the metadata that suits their sales model. And that's fine. That is the nature of that kind of a beast. But if we, as academics or intellectuals or whatever pretentious title we're going to give ourselves, we have to define the bits in our knowledge that we should be able to reach out and grab. And hence the frustration. And also hence the gratitude for the community to keep pushing on this. It was really, really interesting, the question mark thing from Carl earlier. That was because that's computationally easy to extract. And it's a real thing. I wonder what other things exist in our world that we can grab or pinch that we haven't really thought about. So Brendel, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that I can run Vision Simulator on my machine based on what the guys have done. Once it's working, then I will submit my application to Apple and say, this is the stupidest, simplest Vision application I could imagine. However, it's being built within the framework of what we're doing here. So maybe they'll let me go in and put something in my head.
I think the bar is not super high. A lot of people are going, and the presentation that I'm making next month is going to be to people who haven't even done that. But it's people who are it's sort of enterprise is what they're calling it. But yeah, there's pulling a range of audiences through to be able to look at it for a range of reasons. But yeah, so if you so it should be really straightforward to run the simulator. If you go to developer.apple.com. You should be able to download the there's the top sort of build thing is the get ready for Apple Vision Pro. You should be able to go from the Vision OS stuff to the SDK pretty straightforwardly.
Well, I have a problem now with the most recent version of Reader was built in Xcode, but it's the beta, so I can't release it. It's the 15.1 beta, right?
I don't know. We don't use version numbers. We use our sort of obscure code names when we deal with it internally. So I couldn't tell you, like Sonoma wasn't Sonoma, and And I
But it wouldn't be called something specific. It would just be Xcode number something, not Xcode Vision compatible or something like that.
no, that's right. Yeah. So actually I can take a look. If I run UEFI.
Oh, here we go. There was a. Sorry.
No, I have build numbers. It's like 824.
Vision
and never.
OS Beta 4 simulator runtime. I feel like a teenager again. I feel like I'm back at
Yeah,
university.
that's it. Yeah, and I actually don't know what the beta 4, does it say the build number? Like, is it 251 or 230?
The simulator is just beta 4. It doesn't have more further details. But the Xcode I think is up to date, so at least that should be all right.
When you run sim, does it have a version number in the title bar?
I'm in Windows then. I don't download things very fast. I just started.
Oh, you haven't got it running. Okay.
No.
So it should say something like 21 and 211 or something like that, and that would tell, because I think from memory I feel like the public versions that I saw, the public screenshots I saw actually showed what was in beta 1, beta 2, because obviously that there were a number of revisions between beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, things like that. So knowing the actual specific version number means that I would be able to install that and see exactly what public customers and developers are using. But yeah, cool. So that should just give you the ability, and then if you run, you know how to run simulator from those places, you should be able to pull that up and take a look at it. You'll also be able to see what the web looks like. Not that it's particularly interesting to be able to run, the windowed simulated version of WebXR and things like that, but you'll be able to see that.
Oh, here's a relevant question for all of us, I hope. Once I get this working, the Vision version, will that be embedded in the iOS or will there be two separate builds?
Vision OS is in separate OS.
Yes, but because of the ease of just putting, okay, so they won't be bundled like before we had Rosetta and all of that stuff. That's not Vision. For Vision, it's an entirely freestanding like iOS and macOS, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's a shame because otherwise I could release it and you could just try it as a shipped product, but that won't be possible.
Well, so on iPad, yes, and so there are two ways that things will go onto the App Store for Vision OS. One is through binary compatibility. I actually downloaded Reader the other day. It was exciting to be able to see it on iPad, on virtual iPad in my device. But then there will be things that are specifically for it. So if you have an iPad app, it will be on the
So
store.
you've tried Reader in Vision in a virtual iPad already. That's cool. Okay, I'll get drunk tonight then. Okay. So here's the question that maybe is relevant to everyone in this context. In Reader iOS, one of the options, select text and do a web search. Very basic, right? That will then open the web browser and it'll do stuff. How will that interoperability work between Vision applications? Could I potentially have the same to launch Safari from the Reader Vision app?
Sorry, I just got a message at work, but it's not urgent. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, on Reader iOS, one of the basic functions is select text and do web search, and it opens in Safari. Nice. For Vision OS, if we build that same functions, can we in our Vision Reader have someone do that, and then it opens in Safari on Vision? Does it have that same level of application interoperability?
I'm not allowed to talk about things that weren't in the keynote, but yes, I'm pretty sure that's the kind of thing that Apple's pretty open about. You can always open Safari.
Right. Because this is where we may start collaborating a bit more with something like that. Michael, so your interest in this, are you doing prototyping or apps or mock-ups or what kind of actual work do you do in this space?
So I primarily do user testing and interaction design coming up with interaction techniques or conceptualizing interaction in some sense, and then testing it in user studies. So whatever prototyping we're doing, be it hardware or software, is just to evaluate and make the point more proof of concept that has to work for the duration of the study, and that it can break just fine if it wants to. Since the pandemic, I've done more and more theoretical work too. So we created a framework that describes different factors of haptic fidelity. And now we zoomed out a little bit and covered the space of interactions, in virtual interactions, distinguishing all kinds of elements that regarding their level of fidelity, and we can describe them precisely, unambiguously.
Interesting, thank you. So, Rob, how do you feel about all this now?
Knew you were going to get to me.
Yes.
Well, I'm learning a lot. I mean, I was involved in hypertext, and I worked at Apple in the 80s on things that seem unbelievably primitive now.
Like what? Like what?
Oh, you know, I was very excited to get a 1200 baud modem. Big leap over 300. So, you know, those were really interesting days because everything was totally new. Now looping back in, everything's changed, and it's part of the texture of life. And what I've been thinking about is that I'm working on the 4th volume in a series of sort of techno thrillers, historical thrillers. They call them historical because there's a lot of history in them, but they're also slightly near future, so more advanced technology. And I've been sort of excited about the idea of having one of the characters using the Vision Pro because it's so far beyond anything that I've run into. But I'm thinking about my process for writing it and how I do a lot of web research on things that I don't know anything about, and I collect lots of bits of text and put them into notes, and they're completely unorganized. So, well, actually, I have a whole separate Pages document with my notes in it. I do a lot of Google Earth searching.
Pages? You still use Pages, Rob? You paid for Author.
I use Pages because it's better than Word. First job I did at Apple, we had to use Word 1. Yeah, Randall's expression. Anyway, how do I collect all this stuff? How do I organize? How do I get street view or you know, flight or walk videos that would recreate something that my characters would do so that I can describe the landscape you're going through? For instance, in the last one, there's a town in Spain, and I wanted to describe the drive from there to Granada. And I actually went to the road and stepped forward, you know, click by click to kind of get a sense of what the surroundings were like. It's extremely useful. All of these tools are fantastic. I do a lot of language research, and where do I keep that stuff? At the moment, I'm doing a lot with runes. So I'm learning actually some Old Norse and very close to Icelandic. So I'm getting a sense of how to do that. But and I discovered flying back from Rome that there's a little island in the North Atlantic called Olonken that I had never heard of. And I started researching it because I was curious. And now I have I've set scenes on it because I know a lot about this little island. I don't know. It seems to me that I want to be able to move from room to room and have my workspace appear. If I go in the living room and sit down because I want to relax, I'd like to have all that stuff just automatically moved there. As it is now, I have to carry my laptop into the other room. So yeah, I'm excited about doing this, and I really am going to try to give either the Vision Pro or something like it to my youngest character, because I think he's the guy who's in the future already.
There will be nothing like it. So there you go. On that note, really good to see you guys today. And yeah, write something down for the book.
Yeah, I'm going to try a PDF. I haven't finished Seven Hypertext, so I'll read that in device today. It'll be fun.
How about, Randall, 7 computational spaces?
Somebody needs to write it first, but I'll pick it up when it's done.
No, you write it.
Oh no, I just mean I'm going to read. That's something that I can do today in one day. Is to read through that paper, and that'll be fun for me as well as interesting to do in device. Just there.
Oh, what was that?
Which is the Vision Pro.
And a black box that's blurred out. Do you work
Yeah.
for the CIA or Apple?
That's
Secret, you
metaphorically beautiful.
He can't show it to you.
No, believe it or not. All right, Michael, if you would like to join us on Monday week, you are very, very welcome. Very nice to see you here today.
Are we off next week?
No,
Thank you.
normal next week.
Oh, Monday week. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Just in case.
Thank you, Frode. This is really very helpful to me.
Glad you're here. All right, have a
Shit.
good week, everyone. Bye for now.
Yeah.
Bye.